Good morning and welcome to the Search Laboratory webinar on using automation to optimize retail PPC campaigns. My name's Alan Davis. I'm the Global Marketing Director for Search Labs. I'm with my colleague Pete Whitmarsh, our Head of Paid Media, who is giving the presentation today. Pete's been involved in large, often international PPC campaigns for many years, over 8 years now, and really knows his stuff. If you haven't worked with Search Labs before, we're a full-service digital agency that specializes in large-scale and integrated campaigns. We have 150 staff based in offices in New York, London, and Leeds. And we're very proud that we were voted the best large PPC agency at the US Search Awards in Las Vegas recently. And the judges made special mention of some of the techniques Pete's going to be talking to us about today. We are recording the webinar and we'll share a link to it afterwards, so you don't need to take screenshots. And please do use the chat function to ask questions, which we'll pick up after Pete's presentation. Over to you, Pete.
Great, thank you for the introduction, Alan. Just to quickly cover the agenda for today, so I'm going to be first looking at the history of PPC and where it's come and what that means in terms of automation and why now is the time to be using more automation than ever. I'm also going to be looking at Amazon a little bit and how that's been growing recently, and then using all this to predict the future of PPC and where I see things going. So firstly, the history of PPC. So as Alan mentioned, I've been working in PPC for about 8 years. So I thought I'd start off by taking a look back at what Google AdWords looked like 8 years ago. So 8 years ago, it was so simple. There was ads, there was very simple targeting, just keywords and negative keywords really from search point of view. You had bid prices and you had some very simple measurement tools, and that was basically all you needed to do. So a lot of people 8 years ago were doing a tiny bit of PPC kind of on the side of a larger job and doing quite a good job at it really. Whereas what AdWords now looks like is more like this. So there's been like absolutely dozens, hundreds of new features over the last few years, which have led to this being so much more complex than it ever has been before. So ads are far more than just ad text now. There's a whole bunch of different extensions, video ads, native ads, different creative types. You've got loads and loads of options for targeting, particularly when it comes to targeting different audiences, demographics, interests, everything like that. When it comes to bidding, not only do you have your keyword bid prices, but there's all sorts of adjustments you can apply on top of those keyword bid prices. So adjusting based on devices, locations, demographics, etc. There's also loads more measurement options. So whereas everything used to just work on last click attribution, there's all sorts of options now for different attribution models. There's also phone tracking, store visit tracking, cross-device tracking. So a lot of different data that you can get from that. And also on the right side here, shopping campaigns are completely new within the last 8 years. So yeah, for big retail clients, this has been a real game changer, to be honest. So that's massively affected the way that we do PPC for a lot of retailers. So yeah, all this complexity combined with complex clients who maybe have products who are constantly changing, different sales, different stock levels, new products coming in, all sorts of changes in terms of what's going on, really means that we need a solution to this, and it's not manageable for a person. A person can't take care of all of these different things themselves and be expected to take every factor into account and do a really good job of it. So how do we overcome this? Well, the solution, and what I'm going to be talking about today, is automation. So computers are clever. They can make very smart decisions on a very regular basis. They're not prone to any kind of human error. They don't have days off. So what this means, certainly for us as an agency, our PPC team now consists of several developers. We used to just be PPCers, but now we're a hybrid team of PPC experts and development experts. So we've had to develop solutions to help us to automate things and basically deal with this huge complexity and the huge wealth of data that we've got now when managing PPC campaigns. So when it comes to automation, there's a few options. So APIs, each of the search engines have their own API, which allows you to develop quite sophisticated pieces of software to interact with them and automate actions and reports. There's also slightly simpler things like AdWords scripts. These are a bit more of a plug and play solution. If you know a little bit of JavaScript, you can write a script and use that to make modifications and automations to your account. There's also off-the-shelf software, so several software packages exist out there which allow you to do a lot of this automation. There's a lot of, well, there's a few quite big ones. There's also a lot of very niche bits of software that allow you to perform particular functionality. So looking at some examples of where automation may be used and where you may find it particularly beneficial, the first one I wanted to look at was bidding. So I imagine a lot of you are probably already using some kind of auto bidding. If not, then I'd say it's really the time to start. With all this complexity of data out there and all the different bid adjustments, again, it's very, very hard to manage that yourself. So BidLab in the middle there is actually Search Laboratory's own piece of software. We started developing that 11 years ago, actually, before any other bidding systems existed. BidLab works based on kind of a custom hierarchical structure that you'd build within an AdWords campaign to allow for really specific decisions based on how keywords relate to one another. I'd say if you're not doing any auto bidding at the moment, then actually Google AdWords auto bidding has come a long way. It used to be pretty terrible, if I'm honest, a couple of years ago. Google have now introduced a lot of their machine learning technology to allow for far better decisions from Google AdWords auto bidding. And then there's also some more premium solutions out there like DoubleClick, Kensho, and Marin, which have varying degrees of sophistication. And yeah, there's basically pros and cons to each of these, but some kind of auto bidding is really essential to any successful retail PPC campaign. Another example of automation is when it comes to managing large inventories. So retail really is the toughest sector to get right because things are always changing. Products are going in and out of stock, prices are changing, you get new products, you have sales, you have promotions. All of this leads to constant changing nature of a PPC account. So you need to be introducing new keywords, changing ad text, removing old stuff. So yeah, to stay on top of this, some kind of automation can really, really help out to make sure that you're always advertising on the right thing. So to illustrate this a little bit further, I've just looked at a selection of different keywords here. So kind of going from short tail keywords at the top to longer tail keywords at the bottom. So those short tail keywords like watches, men's watches have loads and loads of search volume. And I would say a mistake that a lot of PPC advertisers make is really focusing too much of their time on these keywords because really they don't tend to be the best converters in the account. And actually they're quite easy to manage, which is really why people do spend a lot of time on them. They're easy to manage. You've got loads of data to work with. You feel quite comfortable making decisions on that kind of thing. So yeah, people can get a bit trapped with making decisions on that and not really focusing on the longer tail. So this is where you tend to see far better conversion rates, often higher average order values. However, you tend to be much more limited in terms of the amount of data, and also things are always changing, and there's a huge scope of these keywords as well. So there's a tiny example that I've got here, but you know, people might also be searching for stopwatches, watches with alarms, running watches, different styles of watches, different materials, different pricing, anything else. So there's a whole variety of different things that people might search for here. So in order to get these right, we've got some software. There's other software that exists out there as well, but we've got our own software called FeedLab, which allows us to make really clever customizations to ad text. So if you look at this from a user point of view, you might do a search for something like men's Casio G-Shock watches. This is an example from one of our UK clients here. So you might want to serve an advert there, and you can see in this advert I've got things like from just £53 and browse our range of 82 Casio G-Shock watches and up to 47% off. They're not just random messages, they're not static messages, they are messages that dynamically change when things change in the product feed. So if a new cheaper item comes in than £53, then that advert will be updated. If the size of the range changes, that'll be updated. If a different sale happens and there's a bigger discount or a smaller discount, then that will be updated as well. So yeah, from a user point of view, what you want to do is do a search, see one of these super relevant ad texts, and then be taken to a website that absolutely matches your expectation from what you were served in the ad text. Another example of automation and where it can be really useful is for monitoring your accounts. So, for example, things like if you have a sudden spike in traffic in a particular campaign or particular country or something like that, then you need to be alerted of that. Or likewise, if your traffic drops off, if one of your pages that you're sending traffic to hits an error or goes through redirects or something like that, or has certain messages on there that you don't want to appear. If products go out of stock, then again, there might be some way you can scrape the website, understand what traffic is going to an out of stock page, and again, get alerted to this and make sure you can be on top of it and make sure you can quickly rectify any issues like that. Similarly, if you get ads that are disapproved or products in a product feed disapproved, and also for things like budget tracking, so just making sure that throughout a month you are on track to spend the actual budget that you've got assigned. So again, all of this is, this can be complicated, and we've got quite a sophisticated piece of technology called Alert Lab that allows us to do all of this. But even with some simple AdWords scripts, there's good ways to achieve a lot of this. Another way to automate PPC campaigns is to automatically analyze search terms. So again, we've got a bit of kit which allows us to break down search terms into the individual words and then aggregate the data up for those words. So this is an example from a client we've got that sells beds. You can see in here that this has filtered it on the data of search terms or individual words which have appeared in a search term which haven't led to any conversions or any revenue, but have aggregated a cost. So if you look things like ideas, the second one down on the list there, you can quickly realize why that might not do particularly well. If people are looking for ideas, then they're probably not at the stage of being ready to buy just yet. So yeah, this can be used to detect underperformance, but also can be used to automatically add negative keywords. This is really useful, especially if you're doing things in multiple languages that you don't speak. If you're not speaking these languages, you can't read those search terms, and you therefore can't really make decisions based on the context of the keywords. Therefore, you need to make decisions purely based on the data. So using this data to add negative keywords can be really, really useful. The final example I've got is adjusting bids based on the weather. So this is actually a graph from a client that we've got that sells gloves. And you can see that as the temperature increases, their conversion rate decreases, as you might expect. So from here, what we've done is introduced a bidding system that basically modifies the bid prices based on the current temperature in the searcher's location. So again, this is kind of one example, but there's actually loads of different ways you could take some kind of external factor and use that to influence your strategy. So you could look at things like if you're monitoring your competitors' prices, then you might use that to actually influence your bids. If you see that suddenly your competitors are on sale, then you might want to automatically respond to that by dialing back on your bids. If your competitors start increasing their aggression levels, again, you can program some way to respond to that. There could even be things like stock prices or exchange rates, which might affect the way that your your account performs, and again, you might want to automatically respond to that. Also, if there's certain trending topics in the news that might affect things, we've seen examples before from airlines where if there's suddenly reports of air crashes, then actually they will see a sharp decrease to conversion rate. So again, automatically responding to that is much better than trying to detect these things manually. So there's a lot of complicated ideas there, and hopefully you're not feeling too overwhelmed by that. But just in terms of getting started, this doesn't have to be super complicated. There's several easy ways to get started with this. So firstly, I just want to kind of give credit to some of the search platforms. The likes of AdWords and Bing have developed several of their own automations. So they've got their own auto bidding, they've got dynamic search ads campaigns, various things that allow you to automate elements of your account. And as I mentioned earlier, some of these weren't great a few years ago. They have significantly started to improve. There's still some limitations, but if you're not doing any of this now, then using the search platform's own tools can be a really good starting point. Third-party software, as I mentioned, obviously that comes at a cost, but there are some very sophisticated bits of software out there. AdWords scripts, there's loads and loads of AdWords scripts available for free online. So for example, with the weather one, you can literally do a search for Google AdWords weather script, and you'll find examples of where people have developed a weather script and published that online. So if you've got ideas of things that you might want to automate, then I'd fully encourage you to just do a search for that and see if it's something that someone's done before, rather than having to reinvent the wheel every time. And also agencies, so some of the more sophisticated agencies, particularly the ones who are working with larger clients and who've run into a lot of these issues before, a lot of those may well have developed their own solutions and be able to offer those solutions either as a standalone product or as part of their management. So all this begs the question of, do we still need humans to actually manage our PPC campaigns? Well, of course, I'm going to say yes, you do, because I'm going to be out of a job otherwise. But there's still several things that humans need to do in order to kind of get the most out of a PPC account. So firstly, strategy. Humans are the ones who know what to test, know what kind of automations to actually introduce, to understand new areas to automate, to understand what data to analyze. Even if computers can do the data analysis, you still need to have someone who's saying in the first place, we need to analyze this kind of data. Humans are good at testing. There's some good systems for testing as well, but humans need to be part of testing plans. As I mentioned, implementing the actual automations themselves. So that could be actually writing a script for an automation or something like that. One huge area where humans are still vitally important is on keyword and ad creation. So Google's actually started doing a feature recently where it automates some ad creation, and to be honest, from what we've seen of it, it's pretty poor. I think a good parallel to draw with this is Google Translate. Google Translate is probably the best automated translation tool in the world. However, you still wouldn't trust it to translate your website. There's still a lot of things that you wouldn't trust Google Translate to do. So for similar reasons, if you're doing campaigns in multiple languages, or even if you're just doing them in English, you shouldn't trust an automated system to come up with the keyword list and the ad list that you're going to be running on. And also unforeseen circumstances. So there will be times when things happen that you don't expect to happen. And sure, you can try and anticipate every unforeseen circumstance and have a rule and a system that deals with that. But that's the point of it being an unforeseen circumstance. You're not going to be able to predict all of these. There's going to be weird things that happen that you need a human to notice and a human to put the right solution in place to deal with. So next on the list, I just wanted to quickly look at Amazon. So I'm sure it's news to nobody that Amazon is growing massively. This is the number of millions of members of Amazon Prime in the US, going back to December 2013. So you can see Amazon Prime as a service is growing. It's worth noting as well, in online commerce in the US, Amazon counts for 44% of all online commerce in the US. So if you're a retailer and you're not on Amazon, then there's a chance you're missing out on a big slice of what you could be achieving as an online retailer. So Amazon fairly recently have released a set of tools called Amazon Marketing Services, and these are essentially Amazon's PPC platform that allow you to promote products and to promote your product range within the Amazon framework. So here's a screenshot of Amazon here. I've done a search for snow boots, and you can see these first 4 products here are all listed as sponsored products. There's also this banner at the top from Under Armour, who are kind of promoting their product range here. So there's a couple of other places where these Amazon ads appear, but yeah, Amazon is kind of just getting started with this. It is quite a new platform. There's not huge competition on it yet, and also the platform itself is really quite basic. So in some ways it's basic, so you don't get that much data. So actually, to uncover a lot of the data, we've invented some automations that allow us to kind of dig into things a little bit further than the sort of basic reporting platform that Amazon provides. So yeah, there's automation is still needed even on such a basic platform as this. So moving on to the future and my predictions of where I think things are going. Firstly, focusing or sticking with Amazon for a little bit longer, we expect Amazon to continue to grow. Every single trend is pointing that way, that Amazon is going to continue growing. And yeah, as I mentioned, if you're not on Amazon, then you could be missing out on this. So actually getting your products on Amazon and starting to use those Amazon marketing services is certainly a way that we're seeing a lot of our clients go, and certainly seems to be a channel that's generating a really strong ROI at the moment. We expect Amazon's advertising platforms to get far more sophisticated. They are very, very basic right now, but they work even though they are quite basic. But yeah, I expect this to get far more sophisticated. And other Amazons could emerge as well. So Amazon is obviously the big player right now. We do a lot of work in the Chinese market, and I think it's really interesting to look at where China is, where the likes of Tmall and JD.com count for over 90% of all online commerce in China. So these are kind of Amazon marketplace equivalents where people list their products, and the Chinese population are far more comfortable buying from Tmall or from JD.com than they are buying from a retail website or some kind of specific brand website. So I'm not saying that things are definitely going to go that way in the US, but it's just an interesting observation that we've made elsewhere in the world, and it'll be interesting to see how, with the growth of Amazon, things evolve in the domestic market as well. When it comes to paid search, some of the predictions I'm making here, certainly data is going to continue to grow. We've got loads of data already, but every sign suggests that we're going to get more data. There's going to be more tools that we can work with, more ways we can manipulate and analyze this data. And because of that, there's going to be a need for further automation. So we're already automating certain things, but again, Google massively developing their automation tools. There's a lot of other software providers and agencies out there who are working hard on making sure the right automations exist for every different solution. I've gone out on a bit of a limb here and said I think there will be fewer humans. I think as a lot of this automation becomes more sophisticated and as we can rely on the automations for more things, I do think PPC teams will probably shrink and there'll be less of a need. We're definitely not at that point right now, because right now there's a bit of a tipping point where the automations aren't always quite good enough to deal with the huge amount of data. But I think as the automations get more sophisticated, we probably will be able to manage really advanced PPC campaigns without as many humans. Attribution is something that is going to continue to grow. It's already come a long way, and certainly with the likes of Google Attribution recently entering a beta test, and Google Attribution 360 coming later this year. There's a lot of tools out there. There's a lot of sophistication that's kind of started to happen here, but really there's still a lot of quite basic elements to this. We haven't cracked attribution fully when it comes to cross-device or store visits and the like. So there's more work that needs to happen, and we expect to see kind of more advanced attribution models become the standard really in all PPC. We also expect the search engines to continually focus on quality. So this is something that's changed a lot over the last few years. It used to be that click-through rate was essentially quality score. Now Google focus far more on website quality and giving a good user experience. So things like load times. So things like this have already come so far. And again, I expect these to develop even further so that you need to have a really, really high quality user experience to even be entering the auctions in the first place, really, when it comes to search engine advertising. And also more personalization. So again, we've seen the search engines come so far in terms of personalizing every search results page for the users. As more data is available on every individual user, we expect this to continue, and we expect there to be even more personalization so that when you do a search, it will be completely different to when someone else does a search for the same thing. So finally, just to wrap things up, PPC is continuing to become more complex. Automation really is the only solution to this. And as I say, we're at a tipping point where there's so much data and so much complexity that we absolutely need automation to help to deal with this. Humans are important for now. I think there will, for the foreseeable future, there will remain a human element of this. But yeah, what might happen is that there could be a reduction in the number of humans needed. And yeah, finally, Amazon's growth can't be ignored. It is becoming, or has been for a while, a key part of online retail. So now's a really good time to get involved with Amazon Marketing Services if you're not already. So I will hand back over to Alan just to wrap things up.
Thanks, Pete. Thank you very much for that. You covered a lot of ground. And I know that you could have dived into any one of those issues in much greater detail than you've had time for today. And actually, listening to you talking, it reminds me that whilst we spend a lot of time talking to our clients about things like strategy and attribution and cross-channel integration, actually delivering really good single channel campaigns is the bedrock of all digital success. And if you're spending tens of thousands or millions of dollars a month on PPC, a few percentage points here or there can make the difference between a good year and a poor year. So all this stuff is really, really important. We have had a few questions come in. So starting at the top, you mentioned Google attribution in your talk, Pete. One of our attendees has said, can you tell us a bit more about Google attribution and whether it's going to make a significant impact on this issue?
Yeah, so good question. Google attribution is brand new, really. It's just in beta testing at the moment, so we're not 100% sure, but certainly from what we've seen and from the demonstrations we've had with Google about Google attribution, it does seem to be a big step forwards in terms of the way that we will be attributing digital marketing campaigns moving forward. So it can integrate directly with AdWords and Google Analytics. There'll be far more integrations with the Attribution 360 product, which will come at a more premium price, more premium than free, that is, and be released later this year. So yeah, for now it's only integrating with AdWords and Analytics, but it's basically going to be a one-stop shop for all attribution solutions. So whereas right now you've got attribution within AdWords, you've got a separate attribution system with Analytics, you might have separate in DoubleClick or any other platforms that you're using. The idea of Google attribution is that it just kind of brings everything together and allows for unified data across every channel that you're managing.
Okay, thank you. That's a good answer. Another question, we use Amazon for market entry in some of our international markets, and we struggle to manage our campaigns with Amazon Marketing Services. Is there an API we should be plugging into in order to automate our optimization efforts?
So yeah, there is a very basic API right now. It's only actually very recently been released in the last couple of weeks, and I'm not sure. I think it might be on some kind of limited release. I'm not sure if everyone's able to get access to it just yet, but even the API is not that sophisticated. It's still pretty basic right now, so it's worth having a nose about if you've got some developers who can do that for you. But yeah, I wouldn't expect too much from it. We've had to develop some solutions on Amazon that have been a bit more creative, where we've had to basically simulate sort of using a browser and clicking around different menus and doing that to generate reports. So I think we've got one system that is generating something like 100 reports a day and then compiling them all together into a single one, and it's doing that by simulating clicks in browser. So yeah, in the absence of an API, it's a little bit clunky, it's not as nice, but it does work and it does get you the data that you need.
Okay, and the last question we're going to have time for today. Can you look into your crystal ball, and with all the changes that you're predicting are going to happen in the marketplace, how do you think that's likely to affect bid prices?
Yeah, good question. I suppose it's hard to know exactly, but we probably expect to see that as the targeting gets better, and as you can really hone in on individuals, or not exactly individuals, but people with very specific interests and of a very specific demographic, then it becomes more valuable. You'd expect to see increased conversion rates because of the more advanced targeting, and whenever you see an increase in conversion rates, people are going to be willing to pay more to acquire that traffic in the first place. So yeah, essentially, if people are paying more because they're getting more from it, then that is going to lead to increases in bid prices, I would have thought. It's certainly a trend that we've seen for many years, really, is that on average, bid prices do increase every year. There's always more competition entering the market. And yeah, as the platforms become more sophisticated, there's kind of more incentive to put more budget into PPC. So it makes sense that the bid prices will keep increasing, unfortunately.
Okay, great. Well, that's obviously going to be an ongoing challenge for retailers, particularly in markets where margins are slim. But I'm sure we'll find ways to rise to that challenge. That's all we've got time for in this session. Just a reminder, we will send out a link to attendees, an email to attendees with a link to a recording of the webinar. We'll also include links to a couple of other resources that Peter has referenced, so a bit about Google attribution and optimizing Amazon marketing services. So please feel free to share that with your colleagues. And if you'd like to have a more in-depth discussion about your specific PPC campaign goals, or indeed any other digital challenges you might be experiencing at the moment, or opportunities you'd like to explore, please do get in touch and we'll schedule a chat at your convenience. Thank you very much for attending. I hope you found it worthwhile. I certainly did, and have a great day.